Amen. I'm sure everyone's been rapidly following the developments of protests in Hong Kong. But if you haven't, I'll give you a little recap because I'm really interested in this. Because these protests are all consuming for society on this island of Hong Kong. Hundreds of thousands of people marching the streets, and it's even gone so far that it's affecting our NBA and grabbing our professional basketball players into the national politics of China. It's so interesting. Hong Kong, for most of its life existence, was a meaningless, void pile of rocks that everyone ignored except for pirates and bandits. Mid-1800s, after the Second Opium War, it was gifted, or kind of stolen, depending on your view, by the British. The British took over Hong Kong as a port, as a footprint in a gateway into Asia. And over the last 100 years, it's been a lot of controversy between China, mainland China, and Hong Kong. But while China was coming under communism and developing one way of life, Hong Kong was flourishing under the British Empire. As a matter of fact, it was taking off and became quickly one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and to this day, it is a financial center of the world. It is a jewel, a crown jewel in all of the Asian, islands and empires. And it has become so significant for China. As China took back control of Hong Kong in the mid-1990s, they've had a lot of controversy, a lot of protests, in part as people in Hong Kong were losing freedoms and independence. And that makes sense, right? You lose independence in society and protest. But what I'm captivated by is in the face of such threat that so many people are still willing to go and march. Right? They've had the police and they've had the army coming in, shooting tear gas and arresting protesters and attacking protesters. And yet, there are still hundreds of thousands of people this morning walking in the streets. It's coming because recently they tried to pass an extradition law in Hong Kong, saying if you're arrested in Hong Kong, you can be extradited to mainland China. It's a vastly different society. It's a vastly different prison system. And I think people are terrified of what that could imply. In mainland China, right, in mainland China, if you oppose the government in any way, in the smallest of infractions, you could be arrested. In Western China, if you are one of the minority Muslim Uyghur community, you can be arrested simply for being Muslim or having a beard or simply having an Arabic translation on your telephone. You can be arrested for almost anything. And there are over 1 million people in China who've been arrested for transgressions against the politics. And they live in these complicated gulag prisons. These prisons where if you're lucky, only you will be taken, and if you're not, maybe your entire family can be placed in these detention centers, these jails where people are worked and are labeled, where people suffer, where people die. And I think it's terrifying for the people of Hong Kong to not just lose this freedom, this independence, but say, if I am somehow seen as a political adversary, I can be arrested. My family can be arrested. We can be deported. We can be imprisoned. We can lose our lives. Our very existence is on the line. It's an existential threat. I think this is why the protests have lasted for so long. And this is why China is so adamant in putting it down, these protests. And that sense of urgency, that sense of fear that's propelling people, that sense of our life is literally on the line. And so we need to cry out until heaven itself hears us. That we need to take to the streets and we will not quit because my life depends upon it. That's the urgency we need to understand to read the story in Genesis today, the story of Jacob wrestling with the angels. Remember the story of Jacob, Isaac's son. Jacob has stolen his brother Esau's birthright. He's stolen his inheritance. The two things of greatest value. He's taken his brother's very identity. And he flees like a thief in the night. He flees and runs away because he knows his brother is going to kill him. He knows Esau is not just mad. He knows that Esau is coming after him. And he disappears. has family, and he has herds, and he has servants, and yet his life is still on the line. It's an existential threat. He's facing this river, and just across the river, his brother Esau is marching against him with what would seem like an army. And he doesn't know. He doesn't know if he will live beyond the next day. I think it begins as this metaphor, wrestling with this anxiety, and it becomes very real. Wrestling, physically wrestling with this angel. As the dawn is about to break, as the day has come, and he's going to face his brother, the angel's about to leave, and he won't let him go. And he holds on. He holds on for dear life, and the angel kind of breaks his hip. And he says, I refuse to let go until you bless me. I refuse to stop unless you bless me. Because my very life depends upon it. He realizes that somehow, some way, he realizes that he's been wrestling with this angel, with this God-like being. And he says, I can't live without you. Without your blessing upon my life, I cannot live beyond the meeting of Esau. And I will not let you go. And he blesses him, and he says, and now I've changed you. You're now called Israel. You're no longer Jacob. You're now the one who wrestles with God. And this is the name of the Israelites that will take on. These are the people who wrestle with God. And it's not a fighting with God. It's an urgency, a dependency. We say, really, physically, my life depends upon this relationship, on being connected to God. My very existence depends upon it. And we have to understand that to make sense of the story that Jesus tells us, the story of the persistent widow. I've been thinking all week about the persistent widow. The widow who cries out for justice over and over. And every time one of my children was just harassing me continuously this week, I kept thinking, the persistent widow. My 3-year-old is crying for a bottle of water for like 10 minutes in the car. It's like finally I pulled over and got a bottle of water. It's like you will go to great lengths to make a child stop whining right behind your head. But that's not really it. The persistent widow is really the story of Jacob becoming Israel. It's the story of longing so deeply and saying, I cannot live without this. A widow. It's a parable of a widow who needs justice. She can't live without this justice. And so she goes to the judge who is corrupt, the judge who fears neither God nor man, the judge who has no care for this woman. And yet she goes day after day after day in protest and march and crying out because her life depends on it. And finally the judge relents to make the woman stop. And he says, if I don't stop, he says, though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, but yet because this woman keeps bothering me. This word bothering me. In the Greek translation, the word bother, it's more like this woman is in my face. It's the word they would use in a boxing match to describe one boxer punching another boxer in the head and giving him a black eye. Saying, this woman is going to give me a black eye. This woman is harassing me. She's in my face. It's so intimate. It's like this wrestling match between Jacob and the angel. She is so connected to me that I have to relate. That I have to give in. And the story is the story of our dependence on God. That we have to be in that intimacy. That we have to be so close to God. It's like a wrestling match. So close to God that it's like a boxing match where we're intertwined with God, crying out for God, crying out for His justice continuously. But that's only half of the story. The other half is that God is so much more than this judge. This judge who is unjust, this God who doesn't fear God or man. Say, how much more a God who loves you? How much more a God who cares for you? How much more a God who created you is willing to race down and find you? This week, we had 2 of our faithful members, Tyler and Jenna, had a little baby. It was very exciting. The first 2 days of birth are wonderful. The first 2 days when you have a brand new baby are so wonderful and peaceful because they sleep like 23 hours a day and require very little. It's like the next 3 weeks, the next like 3 years that are much more challenging, right? And the human body is designed to hear a baby crying and wanting viscerally to make the crying stop. Right? It is almost impossible as a new parent. You hear this little baby screaming And you have to jump out of bed at 3 a.m. and respond, because you're going to lose your mind if you don't. The baby cries as a response to get what it needs. The baby needs change. The baby needs comforted. The baby needs food. It needs love and attention. All of these things the baby's crying out for. But also as a parent, you want to give these things to your child. Right? I encourage dads to take off as much time as you can. When you have a child, take off as much time as you can. Because you don't want to be at work. You want to be spending time with this new baby. Even if it's slow, even if it's not that exciting at first, you want to be there giving it, feeding it, taking care of its needs. Because as a new parent, you have as much need from your child's love as they have from your work and from your effort. As a parent, you need to love your children. You desire it. And I think the second part of the story of Jesus is that we're crying out for God's justice, that we're crying out for our dependence on God, but God is also racing to meet us. That God is like this good parent who's desperate to be in relationship with us. Like a good parent waking up and going, that God wants to be providing for us, that God wants to be pouring himself over us. And Jesus tells us over and over and over again, make God the most important thing in your life. If anything takes the place of God, cut it out. If money is more important to you than God, then cut it out. If your hand causes you to sin, then cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, throw it away. If your parents are removing you from God, God is more important than your money. God is more important than your family. God is more important than your title at work. God is more important than your place in society, more important than your house or your car or your vacation or your football team. God is most important in all that you do because you are most important to God. And all these other things can fade away. All these other things can be wrought or destroyed or stolen. That you can lose your job, you can lose your house, but you can never lose the love of God. You can never separate yourself from that relationship. Like Jacob, that wrestles with God so intimately. You're physically connected, grabbing each other, just to be sustained through this moment and through this day. That we are called to live as disciples with such urgency, that we have the urgency of the protesters in Paul saying, my very existence depends on my relationship with God. My very life depends on God. And so I turn towards God first with all that I have and all that I am, with all of my mind and all of my heart and all of my strength. And every blessing that I have in life flows out of that relationship. And every freedom, and every joy, and every hope that I experience comes out of this dependence, this relationship, this rest, this connection that is inseparable. And yet God loves me so much more. And that yet God would die for me. And that God would go to every length to show me His love, that He would even defeat death and come back. And say that not even death can separate you from God's love. I love the story of the persistent widow. I love the story of the persistent widow who will not give up, who cannot give up. But even more of a God who's so great and faithful that God would go to lengths that we can't even begin to imagine. Because no matter how much we love God, we believe that God loves us even more. Amen.